Hi, this is Lainey Cameron, and I'm here with Joyce Yarrow. And this is kind of exciting because it's Joyce's launch day for her latest Sandstorm. Joyce, thanks for joining
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Oh, it's great to be here, Lainey. I really love your podcast. This is just terrific.
Oh, thanks. And Sandstorm is interesting. I would almost say if we insist on putting books in genre boxes, which I honestly don't care, it's like a young adult coming of age women's fiction crossover. Like it's right in the middle between those genres. But I'm fascinated in how you think about this book, and it tells such a fabulous story of the journey of this main character. And I'm kind of excited to talk to you about where the idea came from for such an interesting book.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Southeast Bronx, and I think that there's a lot of that in this book. Many of my friends were kind of on the edge, of this line that we have between law abiding and non-law abiding. And so I had a lot of experiences as a young person that I put into this book, and it took me a while. It's my fifth book to get to this. I wanted to write a character-driven crime novel, and which isn't all that easy to do, but I thought that if I had as my protagonist a teenager whose moral compass is like so shaky, that she gets drawn into a life of crime. And then the question, the what if, the big what if in the book is, can she use the skills that she learns as a criminal? She becomes a jewelry forger. She's really good at disguising herself. She's really smart, but she's using all these skills, in the service of crime. So could she possibly cross back into the mainstream society is a really big question. And so I didn't even know the answer. I just knew that I would throw a lot of obstacles in her way and see how she reacted. And she turned out to be a pretty strong character.
Yeah, she's a really memorable character. I've seen that in some of the reviews. People are commenting on what a great character you created here with her. Let's take a quick peek at one review, which will give folks a sense of this book. And this is from Diane at the Midwest Book Review. And it says, readers seeking solid urban fiction settings and the spunky but struggling character of a young adult who changes immensely through her experiences and choices will find Sandstorm the worthy and intriguing journey of a daughter who moves beyond subliminally seeking her absent parents' approval and into the adult world. And that's why I say it's kind of almost like a crossover between coming of age and women's fiction, because your character starts as a teen, but the journey is really her journey into deciding who she wants to be as a woman and as a grown-up. And like you say, moving away from crime. And it's funny that you say that, because I read this book and I didn't even think about it being a crime novel, because to me, it was about survival for her. It was about what she needed to do to get by. She was pretty much abandoned by her dad, right? And then she was on her own. And so she worked out what she had to do to survive. And it's funny because I never really thought about that line of criminal, not criminal. I just felt like I was on a journey with her trying to work out how to build a life, basically.
Yeah, and but she finds that it's really difficult, even when she decides, and she does start to take control of her life towards the middle of the book. Because in the beginning, she's just reacting to all the terrible things that happened to her as a teenager. But then her capacity for love and loyalty begins to emerge. And I started to wonder, is this going to help her to triumph over all the obstacles? I wasn't sure. And we live in a very judgmental world. I mean, there are people on one side and other side of that line. And sometimes it's poverty, sometimes it's crime, sometimes there's really no difference. And so I wanted to write about somebody that would evoke in the reader this response of, well, there, but for the grace of God go I, that we would have empathy for her. And that was probably the most difficult thing, in writing the book. I rewrote it many times because in the first version, she's kind of hard and does not really feel the consequences of what she's doing. And then gradually, as she matured, I think as I matured as a writer, even though this is my fifth book, I think there's lots of aspects in which we grow up as writers, in each book independently. And as I matured, so did she. And I was really able to see her more fully and realize her as a full human being, which was really meaningful for me. And I think we all, when we set out to write something, there's often something unresolved in our own heart that we're working on at the same time. And that's what really feeds into the writing.
That's beautiful. I love how you said that. Was there a particular moment of inspiration? Like, where did the idea for the book come from? Was it like a scene in your head, or was it the character? Like, where did it start, this one?
Well, you might laugh at this. When I was 10, There was a school bully that used to pick on me. And I stopped going to school like for about a week because she was much bigger than me. And I was really intimidated. And finally, like the kids at school, they all made a circle around us and they made us fight. You know, I was different. I didn't have a Bronx accent in the Bronx, you know, and I was a bookworm. And sometimes when you're shy, people think that it's because you're a snob, which I wasn't. But, you know, anyway, Sandy was her name. And she and I got into this fight on the street. And all of a sudden, this rage filled me that she had been picking on me and doing all these things. And I fought her and I won. I rolled her underneath a parked car and then I helped her get up. And, you know, it sounds like something from West Side Story, but it really happened. And after that, we became friends. And so I became friends with this person who really was capable of all these terrible, violent things. She was really a very troubled kid. And I think that that experience, I was talking to some neighbors who invited me over for a glass of wine and to talk about the book. And they asked me, you know, about my past. And all of a sudden, this memory surfaced that I hadn't even realized had sparked the novel.
Wow. That's really relatable. I can relate to, like, I actually remember I went to a school where I got in a fight and I was not the kid that was brought up knowing how to fight. And like I was privileged and like suddenly I was in this fight environment and yeah, I was fish out of water, had no clue what I was doing. You did better than me. I think I did not win.
I think it had been like welling up inside me for a long time, you know. But the
Wow.
funny part is that we did become friends after that, you know. And so I think that also taught me something that it's not always what it looks like. And
Well,
people are
you
not.
did make this character so relatable, right? I was on her side, right, the whole way through this book. And so you said like a lot of the editing work you did was around character. What did that look like? Like, what kind of process did this book have in terms of editing?
Yeah, well, I am in a writing group that I've been in with several authors for many years, and we really give each other a lot of feedback. And I got feedback about the likability of the character, and I resisted it for a long time because I don't like the likability factor, you know, because it's sort of, well, Dostoevsky didn't think about that when he wrote Raskolnikov, you know, in Crime and Punishment. You know, why should I? But I kind of outgrew that after a while, and I started thinking I want a relatable character. And so I gave Sandy some situations where her capacity for love and loyalty started to come out. And then, you know, you start to see that potential in her to help to think about other people. Because I think often the way that we mature is when we start to see other people in a light in which we can possibly help them, not just as ways that we can use them. You know, like the brain stem in us, you know, when we're born, we just want everything for ourselves. It takes really a long time for a human being to mature, you know, from that sort of baby brain state, which many people stay in that state for their whole lives. You know, it's just all about me. And so she needed to outgrow that and she needed to learn it through experience, you know, through
Mhm.
showing rather than telling. So coming up with those situations for her was my challenge.
Oh, that's great. And like you say, this is your fifth book, and it's so well written. I really enjoyed it. What advice do you give other writers? I mean, it's amazing, right? Many people say they want to write a book and they never get there. You've written five that are now in the world. Give us some advice. What can the rest of us learn here?
Well, for me, I can just share my own experience, you know, and my first two books were detective stories because I decided if I wrote a mystery, I would have to finish it. You know, that it's got a strong structure, beginning, middle, and an end, and clues and a resolution. And so I did finish these books and I learned, you know, sort of through doing. So that's part of the advice I would give is don't be afraid to learn from your mistakes and learn from doing, because I think the biggest obstacle to writing is our own fears of failure. And we live in a society where people are very much judged by what they accomplish financially with something. You know, when I went to Russia to do research, people said, "Oh, you're a writer. That's just fantastic." Nobody wanted to know like how successful I was, if I was, because I had succeeded in being a creative person. So if you can give that to yourself, that's a gift that you can give to yourself, is allowing yourself to be who you are and being a creative person. And, you know, this people will give you advice and that's fine, but eventually you're going to have to say, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. And that's what gets on the page, you know, is your passion and your belief in yourself.
I love that. I'm a big believer in writing is something you learn through doing as opposed to through watching or through taking a class or anything. Like those things are all great, but I actually agree with you that it's only in the act of doing it that you find your voice and learn how to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if there's someone in your life who encourages you in that on that level, then listen to them.
I love that. I'm very grateful for my hubby who supports my crazy,
Yeah.
crazy lifestyle. So what about reading? What do you love to read? And have you read anything good recently?
Well, recently I read a book by a South African writer named Penny Haw. It's called The Wilderness Between Us. And it's just an amazing book, also about a very sensitive subject. I think that's what drew me to it because one of her main characters has anorexia. She's a young woman and she's out in the wilderness on a camping trip with some people. And many things happen in the book, but it's basically a study of how she begins to triumph over her illness in her own way. And I think it's anorexia is a subject that's very delicate and sensitive, and she handled it so beautifully. And you just really get into this young lady's heart and mind. It's beautifully done.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. It's a new one for me, so I'm going to go check that one out. Thanks. So before we wrap up, anything I haven't asked you that you wanted to make sure to cover?
Oh, I was thinking about social media and the fact that today, and this is a great example, what you do with your show, that there's so many opportunities for writers to communicate with each other and support each other. And it's very different than when I first started out and it was just terribly lonely. And now there's almost too much company, you kind of have to put the lid on it sometimes, but it's really a wonderful thing. And I want to thank you, for being part of that supportive community and making this show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it is. And I just feel like I've learned so much from other writers that I want to give back to the writing community here because I feel like I've just been blessed to have support each step of the way. And not everyone is as lucky or as privileged or finds the community as early. And so, like, I always advise people find your writing community as early as you can because those are the people who understand how tough this is, right? Like, this is not easy. And you do revise these things to death. And there are ups and way more downs than ups. And yeah, so thanks. I really appreciate that. And hopefully I'm giving back in my own teeny little way here.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Talking of social media connections, let's look at how folks can connect with you because you have a beautiful Instagram and lots of interesting things on your website too. On Instagram, you're at Joyce Yarrow author, and your website is joyceyarrow.com, and they can find all of your other books there too. And thank you for joining me today, and go check the book out today. It is out now. This is release day.
Yeah, DX Faros has published it today. Yeah, I'm really grateful.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Lainey. Thank you so much.